Avanthika, and today I'm going to be talking about cross-cultural communication. Let me start by saying I am from India and I only very recently moved to the Czech Republic. So obviously, I had a lot of culture shocks. The first one being the cars. Here, the driver's seat is on the left side, but in India, it's on the right side. So as you can imagine, I had many funny encounters with that one, like opening the door for the driver, which left them giving me very weird looks, but we don't talk about that. Another culture shock I observed was that people here in the Czech Republic, when they need to show that they're actively listening to you, they do that by going, And I was very confused when I first heard that, because as for in India, you would nod your head like that or like that, but no one really does that here. Another more of a cultural difference rather than a shock was the school years. Here it starts in September and ends around June, but in India it starts in June and ends around March. So personally, that's a major difference for me. But I'm sure it's not just me. All of you would have experienced some sort of culture shock. And there are many cultural differences like this. For instance, different cultures have different eating habits. In India, if you're invited to a nice dinner, you must finish everything on your plate or else it's considered disrespectful to the host. But in China, if you don't leave a bit of food left over, it's considered that they didn't serve you enough. It's totally opposite. Another very interesting cultural difference is counting. People from different parts of the world count differently. And to prove this to you all, can you all count with your fingers from 1 to 10, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. See, all of you did it differently. Some of you started with your thumb, some with your index, some of you folded inwards, while some folded outwards. And the way you count actually shows a lot more about where you're from, far more than you think. If you're from Western Europe, there's a good chance that you started with your thumb, but if you're from North America, it's likely that you started with your index. In the Middle East, they start counting with their little finger, and in Japan, they start with their palm, which is 0, and then fold inwards. In some parts of northern India, they even count with their finger segments, so they can count up to 20 in one hand. Now, this would be shocking for us because we wouldn't think something so basic, something we do daily like counting, would be different for different people. But is it an issue? Is having so many different cultures, traditions, and customs, is it an issue? Absolutely not. But is it important to know about them? 100%. But why? Why is it important? Because as the years pass by, there is a significant increase in globalization, trade, and tourism. More and more people are traveling to different countries. So chances are high you will meet someone from another culture. And I'm not just saying this, there's statistics that prove it. If you look at the international tourist departures in the Czech Republic from 2018 to 2022, firstly, you can observe that there's a decrease, but that's due to the pandemic. But right after that, 2021 onwards, the levels have picked up, and there has been a 70% recovery comparing to 2019. And this is just the Czech Republic. If you look at the international tourist trips as of November 2024, again, a huge decrease due to the pandemic. But right after that, you can see that there's an 89% recovery comparing to the pre-pandemic levels. If you look at the recovery of international tourist arrivals, after the pandemic, it's only kept increasing. And as of November 2024, there has been a 98% recovery comparing to the pre-pandemic levels. So it's possible that as of today, there has been a complete recovery and it may have even surpassed pre-pandemic levels. But this is not the only reason. The increase in better technology has made our world more connected. So the need to interact with someone from another culture will only keep increasing. So it's hard to avoid the fact that you will meet someone from another culture and it's likely that you have to interact with them. So when you do that, it's important to know about the cultural differences and similarities, because if not, you won't be able to practice effective cross-cultural communication. But before we jump into what that is, let's look at what effective communication is. So what is it? Effective communication is the clear exchange of information, and you must get feedback that your message was received. Notice that I said clear exchange of information. This means that you should be concise and the information must get across to the other person for it to be effective. To understand this even better, let's look at some situations. Read the text on the slide, and if you think this shows effective communication, give me a thumbs up, and if you think it's not effective communication, a thumbs down. This is effective communication because there is clear exchange of information and some sort of acknowledgement that the message was received. Let's look at one more situation so that we're clear. This is not effective communication because there is no clear exchange of information nor any acknowledgement that the message was received. So now that we understand a bit about what effective communication is, let's look at what cross-cultural communication is. Cross-cultural communication is the process of recognizing both cultural differences and similarities among cultural groups to engage within a given context. So when you are practicing cross-cultural communication, that is, speaking with someone from another culture, it's important to converse with an awareness of the similarities and differences between your culture and the other person's so you can practice cross-cultural communication. Now, let's look at some common challenges and failures that we can come across. One of the most common failures would be ethnocentrism. The textbook definition of it would be evaluation of other cultures according to preconceptions originating in the standards of one's own culture. But don't worry listening to the huge definition. It's basically thinking your culture is correct and someone else's is wrong because you are used to the standards set in your own culture. To give a very simple example of this, if you go to a restaurant that serves food from a different cuisine, you might not be that open to it because it's not familiar for you. And this was a very small example of ethnocentrism. An example that is on a much more larger scale and something I believe all of you would know is Hitler's discrimination to Jews during the Second World War. Yes, it is ethnocentrism. But think about it. It's actually very natural because you would be more inclined to your culture than someone else's. And this can even have positive aspects if it is at a lower level, like patriotism, pride and loyalty towards one's own culture is good. But it's not good when ethnocentrism exceeds a limit and you start to judge or discriminate other people's cultures. So it's important to avoid this when you are practicing cross-cultural communication. Now, why is this one of the most common failures? Because when people practice cross-cultural communication, they often make the mistake of making judgments or comments about the other person's culture, which they might not realize is really affecting the conversation. And it might lead it to be non-effective communication. So this is important to avoid. Let's look at a challenge that we can come across, language barriers. So when I say this, you would think that the case is the common language is different. That can be, but there can be different types of language barriers. It can also be that the common dialect is different. This can also cause misinterpretations. But what do we do when the common language or dialect we speak is different? You might think not that much, but it is possible to overcome language barriers with the help of the advanced technology that we have today. It's possible to use translator apps to help the conversation. And the best thing about them, they're portable and very easily accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Another thing you could do is use non-verbal communication, which is basically the type of communication where you don't communicate orally. This means you can use eye contact, gestures, body language, and if possible, you can even prepare visual aids to help the conversation. Now, if you know prior about the cultural difference or the language barriers, you can learn some basic phrases of the other language so that there isn't a huge barrier. So now that I've told you about the challenges and failures, let's look at how to practice effective cross-cultural communication. The key feature of effective cross-cultural communication would be active listening. This means you should engage yourself completely in the conversation and listen to each and every point the person's making. And this can be helpful for the other person because you can give them feedback if they're trying to improve their language skills. Another thing you should do is ask subjective questions or open-ended questions, which is basically questions that don't have just two answers, yes or no. Instead, they have a lot of options. To give a very simple example of this, instead of asking if they like chocolate or vanilla ice cream, ask them what flavor ice cream they like. This would be less pressurizing for them to choose between two options, and you would even get an accurate response. There should also be language considerations during the conversation, which means you should be patient with them and understand if they make any mistakes. And make sure to talk at a slower rate so that they understand you clearly. Another thing to avoid is slang. like Riz or ghosted or no cap, chances are low that they would know it, especially if they're learning the language. Even when you're texting someone, don't use any acronyms of a word. For example, TY instead of thank you. And I think some of you might know this because TY in Czech can be read as te, and that does not mean thank you. Another thing that you should avoid is jargon, which is basically specialized words used in a specific profession. So if you're talking about something that you have great knowledge in, avoid any words that only you use in that topic and there are low chances of the other person knowing. Like I said before, you can even use non-verbal communication like gestures or body language to get your point across, and even learn some basic phrases of the other language so that there isn't a huge language barrier. An important thing that you could do if you know before that there will be some cultural differences is research. It's always beneficial. Research about the different customs and cultures, and then you can understand what to do, what not to do, what would be disrespectful, etc. So, now that I've told you about the common challenges and failures that you can face and how to practice effective cross-cultural communication, it's your decision whether you want to implement it in your life or not. So, the next time you will be visiting a foreign country where you know there will be some cultural differences, remember what I have told you, so you can maybe avoid opening the door for the driver. Thank you.